Good morning. If I can please call the meeting to order. The first order of business are public speakers. Doug?
Yes, sir. Our public speakers today, please sign up, stand near the podium. Bill Henderson from the PCAC, Lawrence Scarlino, Local 375, Murray Bowden, and then Gene Rushinoff.
Good morning. And good morning to the members of the board. This month, the MTA adopted budget and February financial plan was presented as an information item to the committees, and next week there'll be hearings to decide how to deal with service reductions necessary to implement it. Unfortunately, it's clear that events have overtaken the budget, and the situation is considerably more dire than the situation that was portrayed in the budget. It's necessary and desirable that the MTA and its agencies search internally for efficiencies and to make some cuts that bring the budget back into balance. Commitment that Mr. Walters made to remaking the organization is welcome. It's overdue, but it's not enough. We're looking at holes that are far in excess of any savings that are being proposed in the package of service cuts next week, and we're looking at revenues that are volatile, not stable, and not acceptable as a funding mechanism for the MTA in the long term. We can't have volatile real estate transfer, mortgage taxes, payroll levies without a track record, and revenues that can be swept away to solve the state's larger fiscal problems as a major part of the funding sources of the MTA. We have to keep the pressure on our elected officials to come up with a stable, reliable funding mechanism for the MTA for the long term. Neither can we allow them to abdicate their responsibility for paying for pupil transportation and paratransit. Today I want to call on our state and city elected officials to step up and to take account of their responsibilities. I also want to call on this board and its members to communicate with their elected representatives and to keep this issue in front of them. Make sure that they don't get off the hook, that it's not all about cutting service to balance the budget, because it just won't work. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Lawrence Scarlino, and then Murray Bowden.
Good morning, honorable board members. My name is Lawrence Scarlino. I represent 1,200 engineers, architects, scientists, and technicians that make engineering contributions to build this and maintain this system. I'm here today as a reminder that we had, in good faith, negotiated a 2-year contract with 2 raises. The first raise we did receive, but the second raise we still have not yet received, nor have we either received a date of payment for. I would respectfully ask this board that they take a little bit of time out to see if, in fact, they can release a date of payment for that. Respectfully submitted, Lawrence Scarlino. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Murray Bowden, followed by Gene Rushinoff.
Morning. My name is Murray Bowden. I represent my grandchildren, your grandchildren, and the next second generation. I'm dressed this way because I'm a sculptor. I'm a welder. I make welded steel sculptures. I brought one this morning, but security has it somewhere. I wanted to demonstrate my skill in cutting metal. On a table are 2 things I also brought. The round disc is a steel cutting disc, cuts metal like I brought. The glass is from the Hartsdale train station. It used to be on a brass thing that hangs over the ticket window. You stopped selling tickets there. This morning I had to stand outside and buy a ticket in the rain. Cold. That ticket window will never be used. It was added after the station was built. Removing it is a restoration. It's restoring the station to the way it was when it was built. Greenberg, me, we would like permission from the MTA to remove the ticket booth at our expense. I will raise the money. There's a financial problem. We'd like to do it in 30 days, not in 30 months. finding the money will be easy. Getting the permission from you will be difficult. The building department, I've spoken to them, will oversee it if you give them the plans. The police department will not come into the building. It's the MTA project. Who's going to call the MTA when I take my slicing wheel and slice the hinges off the door? All we would like you to do is to do it, and if you're not willing to do it, one day the ticket booth may just not be there. No expense to the MTA. The money will appear. We need the permission. Thank you. I leave the glass here because it's property of Metro North. The disc I'd like and my sculpture I'd like when I leave.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Gene Rushinoff will be followed by Veronica Vanderpool and Onisha Portlet.
Good morning, board members and the staff. I'm Gene Rushinoff with the Strap Hangers campaign. In a little under a week, you'll be holding a series of public hearings throughout the region on your proposals to cut service, paratransit, and student metro cards. By your own admission, it's going to mean, if these go through, longer waits, more crowding, extra transfers, and the death of student metro cards. Now, it won't be pleasant for you to sit through these hearings. There's a lot of public ire. But if last year's hearings are any indication, you'll learn a lot about what your service means to the riding public. It was very impressive a year ago to see people come out about the B71 or the S60 and realize that there are constituencies for these many, 202 bus routes around the city or the subway lines. And that's good for public transportation in New York. I hope you listen to their stories, and I hope you bring along bus maps for each borough and the subway maps so you can follow their entire point. And mostly I ask you that you just come to the meetings. A year ago, the Daily News did a story that said your attendance at the meetings was anemic. We're in a situation where some evenings there'll be multiple hearings, and it's not possible for you to go to two. So it's even more important that there be a turnout that shows respect and consideration for the public. As you know, the Strap Hangers campaign feels there's a partial way out of your situation by using some of the federal stimulus money that's allowed to be used in transportation operations. If you don't want to increase the misery of your riders, you can act in their interest. We also share your hope that the city and the state pick up more of the tab for transit riders. So we have our message today, riders to government, mayor, and MTA, help. We need the help of all these players to save us from a really bad situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Veronica Vanderpool, Anisha Portlet, and Richard Jasmine.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Veronica Vanderpool, and I'm the Associate Director of Tri-State Transportation Campaign, a regional watchdog nonprofit organization. With every passing month, the financial situation of the MTA deteriorates. When Tri-State spoke at last month's meeting, the operating deficit was $400 million less than it is today, and 1,000 MTA workers weren't nervous about being laid off. And the payroll tax still anticipated each of the 12 counties in the MTA region paying its fair share for the economic, environmental, and social benefits of a strong and robust transit network. $90 million in stimulus funds can be applied to this deficit to reduce the impact on transit users. Fewer bus routes can be cut, the wait time on some subway lines can be shortened, parents will have more money to invest on educational materials and not on getting their kids to school, and transit users can save money for a rainy day. We advocate to the MTA and its board members that it redirect the 10% of obligated but not yet spent stimulus dollars to help alleviate these service cuts and the possibility of a 2011 fare increase greater than the 7.5% already proposed. Transit users who need to get to jobs, businesses who need a reliable workforce that can get to work on time, and students who need to get to school need this short-term fix. We wish we had more sustainable funding streams to avoid having to move money between capital and operating budgets. The capital budget is also facing a funding shortage of $10 billion. Of the small menu of options, none of them have unanimous or widespread support, but we need leaders to stand up for riders and students and make the hard decisions. We call on Governor Patterson and the state legislature. Cutting state aid for student transportation from $45 million to $6 million was unthinkable, and claiming that you've done your share to save MetroCards by restoring only $19 million of the $39 million gap, which doesn't include the rising costs of student transportation is unfair. Mayor Mike Bloomberg and the City Council, please establish a sustainable funding stream that's based on funding formulas and not 1995 baseline levels. Nassau County Executive Ed Mangano, please restore $1.4 million to Long Island Bus. And transit riders, please make your voices heard at the MTA hearings next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Anisha Portlet, followed by Richard Jasmine and John Morgeri.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Onisha Portlet. I'm a New York City bus operator from the MAP Store Division. I am a 10-year veteran. With that being said, I am also the director of the Women's Committee of Local TWU 100. I come behalf on the bus operators, station agents, on all 6 departments within the MTA Authority under my local, asking and urging you, as well as Mayor Bloomberg, please, if you guys can get together and figure out a way to work this out, the budget cuts. 19 schools was closed down in the Bronx. Now, station agents, 700 station agents are due to get a pink slip. Next, you're targeting buses, which is my department. So basically, I'm going to keep it simple. This is what I, as a New York City resident, see. This is how it looks to me, as well as my riders. Okay. We as parents don't have a job. Our children, we have no way of paying for our children to get to school. Once they do get to school, however they do get to school, if they walk, the school is shut down. That's 2 meals and a snack that my child cannot have during the day, as well as the education. And when they get back home, I have nothing to feed them with because I just received a pink slip from the MTA. I ask you humbly, please work it out. Mayor Bloomberg, we elected you for a 3rd term. We ask you to help us. We're asking you to do your job. Help the authority, help us. You're putting them in the middle, and we know, to Mr. Walden, I have no blame towards you. We know it's just not you, but we're asking you humbly, mercifully, please make a way. Safe day.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Richard Jasmine and John Morgeri, Nicole Weston. Mr.
Good
Jasmine.
morning. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Richard Jasmine. I love Flatbush Depot. Whatever is written here is not really important. It's just that on the road as a bus driver for the past 10 years, what I have assessed with these kids getting on my bus, it's crazy. As far as the B2, B24, B7, B31, B43, B45, B48, B57, B65, and B67. You're planning on lose this weekend service. It makes no sense. Because me as a parent, I also have kids out there who go to school on a daily basis. And also, cutting these student passes, it's crazy. And as far as residents, without no bus, we can't go nowhere. And those are the bus line in Brooklyn planning for extension. The one borough, no multiply by 5. Now multiply by 5, excuse me. Compared to subway service, buses service is expensive compared to no service. Have bus service is cheap. Not having bus service means standing riders. Under this plan at night, it means stranding entire neighborhoods. The principle of mass transit is that you serve everyone, but subway does not and cannot go everywhere. Take an axe to bus service and you threaten the very principle of mass transit and the service that a large part of this service relies on. You need to find an alternative. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you. John Margeri, Nicole Weston, Praz Barua, and then our last speaker, Matthew Shotkin.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is John Magiri. I'm from CWA Local 1102 in Staten Island. That's the Communication Workers of America. You contract out EasyPass customer service to a private company called ACS, Affiliated Computer Services, which was just bought by Xerox for $6 billion. The workers at the call center are being forced into a pay-per-call system. Pay-per-call makes customer service worse because it means customers get rushed off the phone. Last May, the workers joined CWA with a positive NLRB election. They held together even as your contractor harassed and intimidated them. After the workers voted to join CWA, your contractor refused to sit down and start bargaining a fair contract that protects both the workers and EasyPass customer service quality. That's totally illegal. They are required by law to bargain, but they are suing with absurd arguments to justify not bargaining. The NLRB region has already ruled against them, but they've appealed to the D.C. Board, and since the Obama nominees have not been confirmed to the U.S. Senate, the case is one of hundreds in backlog for decisions that won't be made until there's a full board. Meanwhile, people are suffering. Customer service is already damaged, with calls being rushed through and bad customer service is being incentivized. For now, Xerox has kept a wage floor of $12.50 an hour under the pay-per-call system, but in other ACS call centers, they've taken that wage floor away. The result was minimum wage rates and huge turnover in employees. Customer service quality plunged even further. We know the MTA wrote to the NLRB on this situation, but that is a wildly inadequate response, and it's made no difference at all. You can't allow a contractor to hide behind a broken process to justify breaking the law. We know you have the power to protect your customers and the EasyPass workers, and CWA urges you to do the right thing on this. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Nicole Weston and Praz Ferreira, Matthew Shotkin, and we have one last speaker, George Spitz. Ms. Weston.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Weston. I'm a station agent for New York City Transit. The last time the MTA tried closing down subway station booths and leaving riders unattended, we ended up with a dead rider. Now the bean counters are at it again. Every subway rider knows why you need personnel in the stations. That is part of the ABCs of being a rider. This gives the impression that bean counters don't understand that safety and security have real value. In point of fact, there's not a lot of dollars involved either. Crews are dismantling closed booths at night to ensure they can't be reopened. Do that 100 times and the courts start eating up the supposed savings. Meanwhile, riders are being stranded or placed at risk. Could it be that the bean counters are under the impression that personnel who don't directly operate trains and buses are not necessary? Who's next? Cleaners, maintainers, conductors? Only one transit worker in 3 works at the controls of a train or bus. Without the work of the other 2, riders would have to be crazy to set foot in the station. That seems to be where this board is headed. You are going the wrong way. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Praz Ferreira, Matthew Shotkin, and then our last speaker, George Spitz.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Praz Barua. I'm representing Urban Youth Collaborative and New York City students. On January 28th, UIC sent a letter to Chairman Walder requesting a hearing on the student MetroCards. The students need our own hearing because the issue affects us the most and our voices will not be heard at the scheduled public hearings. We understand that the MetroCards are not just the responsibility of the MTA, but also the mayor and the governor. Since we haven't heard back from you, I'm here personally to invite Chairman to meet with the students to figure out how we can save the MetroCards and put pressure on the mayor and the governor to do their part. In the last 24 hours, we've gotten 2,200 signatures supporting our request. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew Shotkin.
Good morning. Since the last board meeting, obviously my called comments to the governor didn't work. Mr. Alpert is still not sitting at that board table. He's still sitting in the audience. With the budget hearings coming up at the end of next week, I wish that they would lower the actual amount. $91 million is too much. I wish that the figure could get lowered at least some. 10% is okay. 50%? Come on, give me a break. Even though I also wish that the percentage was a little lower. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you. George Spitz.
I want to praise the MTA personnel for its courtesy, and I believe they're capable people. I believe the solution to the whole problem is substituting light rail for the 2nd Avenue subway, and I've explained that in detail, and I want to give us the press and the board, but I'd say and I hope you'll give serious consideration to this, Mr. Walder, because this is the 2nd Avenue subway, 1.7 mile, 4.65 billion and counting, even by your estimates now, won't be finished till 2017. But Russinoff and Christine Quinn have called for postponing it and the East Side access. I'm not for postponing. They need the transportation. Really, the new manager had excellent success with light rail in Vancouver. I urge you to give serious study to substituting light rail for the 2nd Avenue subway, and I think you'll have enough money then so you won't have service cuts, layoffs, etc. And I want to thank you all for that. And I'll see you in Staten Island, my friend. And I'm going to skip the same line. Thank you. What do I do with these? The press got them? Thank you very much. Well,
Thank you.
A few of them left.
I believe we've also been joined by the public advocate, Bill de Blasio. Is that correct? Is he in the room? He's on his way up. We'll just wait one moment. No? No? Okay, I understand the public advocate is not here, so that concludes today's public speaking session.
Thank you to all of the public speakers today, and excuse me, good morning to the board. It's been only a few months that I've had the honor of joining you and serving with you on this board. It seems that during that time, we have been forced to deal with one financial crisis after another. I hope I'm not the jinx in this problem. In December, the board moved quickly and decisively to close a $400 million hole that opened up primarily due to cuts in the state budget and further shortfalls in the payroll tax. We thought we had closed the hole. Unfortunately, since then, the news has gotten even worse. We're now struggling with a new $378 million gap, again due primarily to projected shortfalls in the newly enacted payroll mobility tax. People have tended to put these together and think they're the same thing. Let me be clear to everybody who is listening. They sum. The sum of the shortfall for the MTA is $750 million. And it's happened in just a few short months. I think this underscores the path that we've set out, the need to reform how we do our business and to permanently reduce our cost structure. We've been talking about that over the past months, and we are now starting the painful process, but necessary process, of implementing the budget that you already adopted. Yesterday, we announced that we're moving immediately to eliminate more than 1,000 positions in the organization. That includes a cut of over 15% in our administrative headcount, the belt tightening that we started and said we would commit to. It also includes the elimination of station agent positions that were actually taken out in the 2009 budget and that were planned to be done through attrition, but the size and magnitude of the budget problem that we have now no longer allows us to do it in that way. And next week we'll begin a series of public hearings that deal with service changes, deal with student fares, deal with tolling in the Rockaways. As painful as all this is, and there's nothing easy about anything that we've just said, we're far from out of the woods as we seek to close a new, effectively $400 million gap that's in front of us. So we're pursuing aggressively every idea that we've talked about. We're cutting our overtime. We're consolidating functions. We're reworking all of our supplier contracts. And we are looking at our materials and our inventory and finding better ways to be able to control that. Every one of those pieces will provide some savings. What we don't know is whether or not they're enough to be able to get to the $400 million of savings effectively we need over and above the actions that we already took. I've looked for different ways to be able to express it. The best I've come up with is I sometimes feel like we're running up the down escalator. One that's working, Doreen. And it's a hard place to be. We will, over the next week, hold 9 public hearings. We do understand that the budget that we've adopted, the actions that we're taking, do have painful actions for customers and do involve pain for our employees. I feel badly about that. But I truly don't see any choice. It's going to be a very, very difficult year for all of us. I guess personally I continue to believe that we, and we, the board of the MTA, the entire organization, must take all of the necessary steps to show the taxpayers, the riders, the toll payers that we are using every dollar wisely. I think we're doing the right thing in doing that. We're only at the beginning of that process, but I continue to thank you for your support as we take the steps that we'll have to take. With that, we move to the agenda. May I ask for a motion, please, to approve the minutes? In favor? Thank you. Can we have the report, please, from the Committee on Finance?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, there are 3 action items today. The first action item seeks approval of the supplemental bond resolution found on pages 3.1-3.13 of the board materials and the authorization to take such other actions as more fully described in the staff summary on pages 3.1 and 3.2, all in connection with the issuance of dedicated tax fund bonds, Series 2010A, in an amount up to $500 million. The second item seeks approval to authorize the MRT-2 escalation payments to Dutchess, Orange, and Rockland counties, all as more fully described on pages 3.14 to 3.15 of the board materials. The third action item seeks board approval to authorize the transfer of the TBTA operating surplus, all as more fully described in pages 3.16 to 3.25 of the board materials. I move all these three action items.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Today there are two non-competitive procurements in the amount of $198,667. There are 6 competitive procurements in the amount of $4,176,032. There is 1 ratification in the amount of $35,800. I move all these procurements.
Second? In favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that completes the Finance Committee report.
Thank you. The report from the... Yes.
But it is, I guess, related to finance. Obviously, the actions that you announced yesterday were, in fact, necessary without choice. However, but they do affect real people, and and people who are in the bargaining units, who are represented by the unions, do have the union to advocate for them. But there are also hundreds of people affected who don't have people to advocate on their behalf. And while the preferable way to downsize, from my perspective, is through attrition, and we need to get smaller, we're not in a position to do that. But I would hope that we take every effort to come up with severance packages or things that will placement opportunities to try to make the separation as real as possible, so that our employees who work for us realize that that we care about them and their futures. There's an economic impact for the agency. There's an economic impact for the region, but there's a very real personal impact for these hundreds of people. And unfortunately, this may not be the last. So that we need to unhappily get good at separating ourselves from our employees.
I think that point's very well put and very articulately put. This is and very much affecting people, and people who have been dedicated to the MTA and work very hard for the MTA, and we're not missing that. We have sought in doing this to set up a voluntary severance arrangement for non-represented employees, and all the represented employees will follow the terms and conditions in the various collective bargaining agreements that are there. And in every case, we will try and do things in a way that is compassionate and realistic within what we're doing. Well put. Thank you. Norman?
Mr. Chairman, let me just ask a question. What disturbed me a little while ago is that young man that stood up and said that he can't get to school, and the bus operator who said that she's about to lose her job, and her children may not have 2 snacks and may not have any food when they get home in the evening, and to lay off 1,000 people, and I know we have to take responsibility and make the necessary cuts to get this budget under control. But let me just ask a question. It seems that every time I ask a question, whether it be about the syntax on cigarettes or alcohol or something like that, it just seems to fall on deaf ears. When I ask about advertising, that doesn't work. a few months ago, I think maybe it was almost a year ago now, we were paying almost $5 a gallon, $4.85 a gallon for a gallon of gasoline. How difficult is it for us within the next week to talk to the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, all the legislators, and say, listen, all we're looking for from each one of you is 2 cents more a gallon on each gallon of gasoline sold, so that everybody pays a fair share. Because Jersey's gas is a little bit cheaper than New York's gas. Connecticut's a little bit cheaper than Jersey sometimes. But I think if we all got together, because we're living in a society right now where things are just not the same as what they used to be, and I think if we all put a little pressure on the legislators and get a commitment from them to say, look, we need 2 cents a gallon, I think that that would not only take the MTA out of the hole that it's in, but I think it would also provide additional money for the state of New Jersey, additional money for the state of Connecticut, and it would provide additional money for the city of New York. It would eliminate the threat of the East River tolls or the bridges and tolls going up, but I think it would also give people an opportunity to save their jobs. But I just don't see where we're not pushing the envelope far enough. The stimulus money, the federal government is not going to come in and give us any stimulus money. What's going to happen is we're going to lay off 1,000 people. We're going to pay them unemployment for 2 years. We're going to pay them health benefits for however long that takes. That's going to cost double the amount of money that it costs for us to keep them working. But if it's 2 cents or 3 cents or 1 cent per gallon of gasoline, and we want to go green in this country, then why don't we push the envelope far enough and get someone to make a commitment to say, look, let's all do it. Jersey, Connecticut, and New York, 2 cents a gallon. Everybody pays it. It's a luxury to drive to work. If you want to drive, it will probably put more people on the mass transit system as opposed to people just getting in their car and polluting the air. But at the end of the day, it's going to bring in revenues, because that child that's not going to school because he or she doesn't have a bus pass or a train pass is going to walk from wherever it is, 6 blocks, 8 blocks, 10 blocks. It's going to wait a few minutes. It's going to hop the subway. The police officer is going to arrest him. He's not going to answer his summons. He's going to want to become a police officer, a correction officer, or a firefighter 5 years from now. A warrant's going to pop up. He's not going to get the job. And it's just going to create such a nightmare in this state. It's going to be kind of difficult to repair. So I would personally call on Shelley Silver, David Patterson, the Republicans, Sampson, everyone, the state of New Jersey, state of Connecticut, and say, look, why can't we sit down within the next 48 hours and get our people together to say, let's put 2 cents per gallon on gasoline so that we can make this thing work. It didn't work with the taxis because we can't seem to get that together. It didn't work with the payroll tax. We can't seem to get that together. But we already know it works with gasoline. We already know where that money goes. We already know where that money's taxed. We already know everything there is to know about that tax. And I think that if we do that, and you're doing a hell of a job in the position you're in, God bless you, because at the end of the day, I would not want to be you, brother. I would not want to, especially riding a train. I wouldn't want to be you, you know. But, you know, look, I think all of us in this room have enough political clout that we could say, look, let's convene a meeting. I mean, the mayor of the city of New York have convened meetings on guns and brought mayors from all over the country. Surely Mike Bloomberg is popular enough to pick up the phone and say, listen, I want to meet with everybody involved in this right now so that within the next week we could put 2 cents on it and let people argue any point that they want, but it's going to save so many jobs, it's going to go green, and it's going to take New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut a little bit out of the hole that we're in. Thank you.
Doreen, the Committee on Transit.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a first. Since I've chaired subway and bus, this is the first time that the procurement agenda has fit on one page. And I think it reflects the seriousness with which you and Presidents Prendergast and Smith are engaged in the effort to cut costs and expenses, and we all applaud you for it. There are 7 New York City transit procurements totaling $12.9 million. One is non-competitive in the amount of $6.1 million, and 4 are competitive in the amount of $6 million. The committee moves both of these, recommends both of these, and I move them.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
There are 2 ratifications in the amount of $800,000. The committee recommends them, and I move them.
Second, please. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And once again, there are no MTA bus procurements this month.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pally, the
Long Island Committee met this week for the Long Island Railroad. Sorry. There is one non-competitive procurement in the amount of $6.7 million. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
There is one competitive procurement in the amount of $303,000. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
In favor? Opposed? Thank you.
For Long Island Bus, there are 3 non-competitive procurements in the amount of $445,699. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
In favor? Opposed?
There is one competitive procurement in the amount of $85,000. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
In favor? Opposed? Thank you.
And there are no ratifications. This completes the report of the Long Island Committee.
And I think continuing with our efficiency program,
Yep.
we're moving straight on to you
Right
again.
at bridges and tunnels. There are no non-competitive procurements or ratifications this month. There are 3 competitive procurements in the amount of $9,714,000. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
In favor?
This concludes the Bridges and Tunnels Committee report.
Thank you very much. Jim from Metro North.
Metro North Railroad operating at 98.4% on time in the month of January.
You want the mic, Jim? We don't want you. We want everybody to hear the on-time performance.
We are also pleased to announce that during the recent February 10th snowstorm, Metro North operated at 98.4% on time during the storm, and more importantly, there were no customer or employee injuries during that storm. I'd like to present the following for the board's approval. There are no competitive procurements or ratifications this month. There is one non-competitive procurement totaling $183,255. It is for repairs of CP 53. If all of you remember, we had a derailment there about a year ago between Beacon and Poughkeepsie. This will put our Beacon in Cold Spring. This will be a permanent fix to that. The committee recommended it, and I move it. Second.
In favor?
Aye. This concludes the Metro North report.
Yes, Susan.
I want to add one thing. We also had in Metro North, both east and west of Hudson, another perfect day. And the reason I think this is important is that we all know how desperate our situation is right now and how difficult it is on everyone on staff. The fact that we are still turning out such incredibly superior performance is a real tribute to the work ethic of the people at the MTA who keep these trains running. So thank you, sir.
I think very well put, and actually Jim reminded me, and I was negligent in saying this. I think since we've met, we had a major snowstorm that took place in New York. People from all across the organization. It's the first opportunity I had really to see how the organization responded to that. Absolutely terrific. People from all over the organization, a degree of coordination and communication that was super. A new website that went up that was applauded by people for giving clear information to people in difficult times, and also a way that we recognized that the storm was going to hit and people's travel patterns were changed. And I was tremendously impressed by both Metro North and Long Island, hopped right on that, changed their schedules, moved to be able to do things. It was great to see. Clearly, you're only as good as your last snowstorm, and we have another one approaching. So I knock on wood for each one. But it really is a credit to the organization, to the people who lead it, and to the thousands of people who work here that we're able to do these things, and we kept New York running so well through a difficult time. Jim, I'll also say that Howard Permit is unfortunately ill, but I will send him a note and make sure that he's aware that you have consistently carried the torch for Metro North. The Committee on Capital Construction, Planning, and Real Estate. Nancy, please.
Okay. I'd like to present the following for Board's approval. There were no non-competitive procurements. However, there were 2 competitive procurements totaling in the amount of $59,719,000. The committee recommend these. I move them.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
There was 1 ratification this month for the amount of $2,300,000. Again, the committee recommended this procurement, and I move it.
In favor? Aye. Thank you.
Regarding the real estate portion of the meeting, the committee reviewed and recommended a total of 10 real estate items for board approval. All are fully described in the board materials. The committee recommended these 10 items, and I move them.
Second. In favor?
That concludes the meeting.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to call for a motion for the board to go into executive session. You're not going to let me finish, are you? It's also part of our efficiency program. It's to deal with matters concerning collective bargaining and a matter concerning the appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. I'll now accept the motion. Motion.
Second.
Thank you. In favor?
Aye.
Okay. If we can clear the room, please. Thank you very much.
Chairman, talk about the layoffs a little bit. Is there any way, or was there any way to avert the layoffs? I know you're talking about attrition, but I mean, is it certain, or do you see any avenue away from that?
Well, I think our financial position is dire. I don't think I can overstate that. Clearly, I'd like to look at every avenue we can do to be able to reduce our costs, ways that would be less painful for our customers and for our employees. I will continue to say that I think we have opportunities in looking at outdated work rules and past practices that might be helpful in that regard. But it's a tough situation.
You have set aside for severance, for example, for non-represented? How much does it cost to separate people, and when will these layoffs go into effect?
The layoffs will go into effect in approximately 60 days. There's a notice period that starts and a process that then plays out. We'll be following a process for all of our represented employees as contained in their collective bargaining agreements and following statutory protections. And in regard to our non-represented employees, we'll be following a process that seeks to do this as well. I cannot give you a firm answer on the separation cost because it depends on how many people take voluntary severance arrangements, and we'll wait to see what the answer is in that regard. Clearly, and I think other people at the board made a comment about being compassionate in the way that we do this, and we will seek to do that. We are seeking to put in place voluntary severance arrangements. We will be funding health care for a period of time. We'll be paying unemployment in all the normal ways of being able to do this. Those are real costs to the organization, but the savings that occur are not just savings in this year, but savings that occur each and every year on a going-out basis.
Dave? You talked about this morning that we're not out in the woods at all yet, and then also during the public section there was a bus driver who spoke. I think it kind of alludes to the question I think a lot of us have. Are we going to see bus drivers and those who actually do run the system laid off possibly this summer or later on?
You might well. The public hearings that we start, I mean, the round of actions we took now, let me stop on that. The first piece that we took right now was to look at our administrative costs in the organization. I've been saying for some time that we needed to decrease and lower our administrative costs. The layoffs that we're talking about here on the administrative side, over 600 positions there, about 15% of our administrative workforce, are in our back office. They are not frontline service delivery. However, we have public hearings that begin next week for a whole series of service changes. The savings that come from those public hearings will involve more layoffs if those changes are enacted following the public hearing process.
Meaning the subway line changes, the bus line changes.
Absolutely. I mean, the reality is that the vast majority of our costs are in labor. When we stop running a bus, we save some money for fuel, of course, but there'll be a saving in terms of bus drivers, savings in terms of maintenance employees. Those are savings you will see, and they will come in the form of layoffs.
Jay, what kind of pushback do you expect from the 10 unions? Do you expect, or are you concerned that they might get caught up in procedural or kind of a legal bog after you try to lay these employees off?
We will be following all of the negotiated arrangements in our collective bargaining agreements, and we will follow that to the letter, Tom. I don't see any problem as it takes place here. Nobody likes the situation that is here. These are hardworking, dedicated men and women who have been working for the organization. The reality is we have to tighten our belt. We have to reduce our cost structure. We have to find a way for the MTA to live within the limited means that are available to us, and I don't think there's any choice but to take these steps.
Are you considering integrating or consolidating the administration of the railroads? Would that be a possible measure you could use to get, is that something that you seriously are looking at to use that as a way to save money?
We are looking at the consolidation of administrative functions across the MTA. When we look at functions like accounts payable, accounts receivable, human resources, communications, legal, etc., we've been looking at how we might consolidate those functions across the MTA. I've often talked, for example, about our call centers. Today, the MTA operates 92 separate call-in lines. We operate 5 different call centers, and if you call one of our call centers and get schedule information for a railroad, they will be unable to give you the information for the bus that you might take after you finish your journey on the railroad. That is no longer consistent with the way a modern organization works, and we are looking at the consolidation of many of those things.
Jay, you said you'd follow the letter of the contract, but I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think the TWU contract has any stipulation for a severance package. So can you tell us what the plan is for these transit workers? They get 60-day notice, and then what? Is there any chance of them getting a severance?
There are negotiated arrangements within each of the collective bargaining agreements, and we'll follow those arrangements. There are many unions that are involved in the process that I'm talking about. I don't have the specifics of each union, but we will follow what has been negotiated in the collective bargaining agreements.
But not beyond?
No. What has been negotiated in the collective bargaining agreements.
Roger. As far as, you talked about after the public hearings, is there still a chance that the possibility that there could be saved Metro cards for students?
Well, the public hearing process is a genuine process. I expect that we will receive a chorus of comments that will come because I recognize that the changes that the MTA has put on the table have painful impacts to customers and to students. As to an outcome that might change that, the bottom line right now is that we've lost $750 million in revenue since December. We simply do not have the monies to continue with the arrangements that have previously existed. I would love to see students have free trips to school, but I believe that's a responsibility that the city and the state need to come to, and to the extent that the city and the state are able to reach an arrangement to preserve that, that would be terrific.
Jay, what are the specifics of the severance for the non-represented employees? Are they getting a week of pay for every year of service? I mean, how does that kind of accrue?
The specifics largely have to do with time for service to a cap of $20,000 per employee.
Concerns raised about removing the booth agents will contribute to
First off, let me be clear that the crime in the subway is at the lowest rate in the history of the subway right now. I think that the NYPD has done a terrific job in terms of dealing with crime in the subway. Second, we have over 2,500 NYPD officers and over 2,000 cleaners that are in our stations. These are people moving all around our stations. They're there at all times of day and all times of night. I think we're providing a safe, secure system, and we'll continue to do so.
Does the student subsidy represent a number as far as revenue in the budget that you're talking about?
The lost revenue to the MTA as a result of the free student travel is $214 million a year.
And is there any inherent fairness in having urban kids no longer being subsidized while suburban kids continue to get subsidy from the state?
People have argued, and I appreciate this argument, that the MTA is the yellow school bus of New York City. I think it's also true that children all over the state board a yellow school bus in the morning and do not pay a fare. The point I would make about that is we cannot lose sight of the fact that that yellow school bus does not operate for free. That yellow school bus is paid for by city and state subsidies. To the extent that that is done for the MTA, the students will be able to ride in the way they've done before.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if you could assure us absolutely, given the fact that you say that it's a dire situation, that there will be no fare increase for this year.
The plan that had been adopted by the legislature last year called for regular biannual fare increases and toll increases. The next scheduled increase was at the beginning of 2011. Throughout the situation, it has been my intent to hold to that scheduled increase. I believe that having regularly scheduled increase is preferable to increasing fares and tolls in other circumstances, and we're trying very much to stay in that mode.
Do you think you're going to be able to do that?
Well, I'm trying very much. It's my intention to be able to do that. I'm trying very much to be able to do it. As I've said to you before, the financial situation today is even grimmer than it was simply a month ago. We're watching a declining situation, and I'm still working very hard to be able to close the magnitude of the gap that's in front of the MTA right now.
Pete, and then one more.
I did somewhere in the back of my brain. Have you spoken directly to the governor about the funding situation? Is there any hope of something coming out of Albany?
I have talked to the governor. I have talked to the legislative leaders. All are aware of the state of the MTA's finances. I testified 2 weeks ago before a joint budget committee of the legislature, and spelled out in very clear terms, I hope, in that discussion as well, the state of the MTA's finances. I think everyone is aware of it. I think there are various ideas that are being looked at in terms of helping the MTA, but I have no further information on what might be there.
Mr. Chairman, can you talk at all about Long Island, the effect on the LIRR?
Well, again, I think that the changes that we have made today are in the back office functions for the railroad, so they will not be obvious to customers, and I believe that we can tighten our belt in doing that. There are a series of service changes that have been proposed for Long Island. They will be the subject of public hearings that begin next week.
Is there any point on the possibility of fare increase? Is there any timetable when you would know, like by the summer you would know? Is there any way you can say that by July 1st I'll be able to say whether there might be a fare increase?
I don't have a specific timetable right now. Clearly, we need to operate through the year with sufficient resources to get through the year, but I don't have a specific timetable right now.
Thank you very much.
Chairman, did I hear you hint at another round of layoffs or sort of forecast that might be in the office or not?
I wasn't hinting. I was being very clear that as we implement the service changes that are included in that will be the subject of public hearings, and as those become implemented during the year, I expect that there will be layoffs that will follow from that as well.
Thank you.